We need to move the patient now. Music, that is an order. He is not stable for transport. Moving him now will kill him. The termination paper hit the mahogany desk with a suffocating thud. You are a liability, Nurse Foster. Dr. Sterling sneered, adjusting his Rolex as if her entire career were nothing more than an inconvenience. Pack your things. You're done. Abigail Foster didn't beg. She didn't cry. She simply nodded, her face calm and unreadable, then turned toward the door. She never made it to the elevator. The hospital windows began to rattle. Coffee cups trembled across the nurse's station counter. Ceiling tiles buzzed. The sound outside wasn't thunder, it was rotors. A deafening roar swallowed the ER as a massive shadow passed over the glass facade of St. Jude's Medical Center. A Black Hawk helicopter was descending toward the rooftop, and the pilot had only one demand. Where is the nurse? St. Jude's in Seattle was a hospital where money often spoke louder than vital signs. Upstairs smelled like imported lies and polished marble. Down in the emergency room, the air smelled like antiseptic, fear, and old blood. That was Abby Foster's world. 34 years old, tired blue eyes, hands that never shook. To the residents, she was just a quiet night nurse who never complained, never gossiped, never joined after shift drinks. Her hair was always pulled into a tight no-nonsense bun. She moved with calm efficiency like someone who had learned long ago that panic wastes time. She was invisible. Tram 1 is clear, Abby said, peeling off her gloves after a brutal 16-hour shift. Go home, Abby, Dr. Rickman told her gently. You look exhausted. One more check in Bay 4, she replied. The John Doe Rickman sighed. Administration wants that bed. If he's stable, we're supposed to transfer him. He's not stable, Abby said flatly. BP's fluctuating, I'm not moving him. Rickman raised his hands. If Sterling sees a homeless guy in a trauma bay during morning rush, it's your head. It usually is, she murmured. The man in Bay 4 was thin, gray, and unconscious, found under a bridge, severe pneumonia, malnourished, no ID. But Abby had noticed the old Army field jacket in the bag and the faded scars along his shoulder. Shrapnel scars. She adjusted his fore and pulled the blanket up gently. You're safe here, she whispered. Then the ER door slammed open. A team of paramedics rushed in with a young man in a designer suit screaming about his leg. Behind them stood hospital director Preston Sterling. Perfect hair, tailored coat, smile like a shark. Clear trauma bay. Sterling snapped. Now this is Mr. Harrington's son. Every bay was full. Sterling's eyes landed on Bay 4. On the old man alone, unwashed, unimportant. Foster, he barked. Abby stepped out from behind the curtain. Yes, doctor, move him. Hallway, waiting room. I don't care. That bay is needed. Patient in Bay 4 is critical, Abby said evenly. Respiratory distress and cardiac arrhythmia. Moving him could kill him. Sterling stepped closer, voice low and venomous. He's a vagrant. Mr. Harrington funds half this hospital. The YA went silent. Abby shifted her stance without realizing it. Feet grounded, shoulders squared. Combat calm. No, she said. Sterling blinked. Excuse me. Broken leg. Abby continued, voice steady and carrying across the room. Painful, not life-threatening. He can wait. The man in that bed cannot. You're a glorified bedpan changer, Sterling hissed. I decide who matters. Every patient matters. Sterling reached for the curtain. Abby's hand shot out on instinct, catching his wrist mid-air. Not hurting him, just stopping him. Do not touch my patient. Sterling recoiled like he'd been burned. Security, he shouted. Then to Abby, my office now. She checked the old man's monitor one last time. Don't let them move him, she told Rickman. Then she walked toward the elevator like a soldier heading to a hearing she already knew was decided. Sterling didn't waste time. Insubordination, assault, refusal to follow orders, he said, scribbling furiously on the termination form. You threw away your career for a nobody. He's a human being, Abby replied calmly. And he's a veteran. I don't care if he's the president, Sterling snapped. He doesn't pay. He signed the paper and slid it across the desk. You're finished. That's when the building started shaking. Both of them looked toward the window as the thunder of rotors filled the sky. Sterling frowned. What the hell is that? Abby didn't say a word because somewhere deep down, she already knew. You're watching Hero Revealed, where the quiet heroes finally get the recognition they deserve. If this story hooked you, make sure to like the video, subscribe to Hero Revealed S, and turn on the bell so you never miss a new military and hero story. And drop a comment telling us what country you're watching from. Our warrior family is worldwide. He doesn't pay. You are fired effective immediately. I'm reporting you to the nursing board. You'll never work in this state again. You'll L, be lucky if you can get a job scrubbing toilets at a gas station. He signed the paper with a flourish and slid it across the desk. Sign it. It's an admission of guilt. If you sign, I won't press assault charges for grabbing my wrist. Abby looked at the paper. Termination for cause. It was a career death sentence. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her ID badge. She placed it gently on the desk right on top of the termination letter. I won't sign that, she said softly. And you won't press charges because the security cameras in the ER will show I acted in defense of a critical patient. Sterling laughed a dry, humorless sound. The cameras. Who do you think controls the footage? Foster. The cameras will show whatever I want them to show. Abby stared at him. She realized then that there was no fighting this. Not here. Not in his domain. The system was rigged and men like Sterling held all the keys. Is that all, sir? She asked. Get out. Sterling waved his hand. Security will escort you to your locker to collect your things if you're not off the premises in 20 minutes. I'm calling the police for trespassing. Trespassing. Abby turned with a sharp pivot. She didn't slam the door. She closed it quietly. As she walked back to the elevator, the adrenaline began to fade, replaced by a crushing weight. This job was her life. After the service, after the things she had done and seen in the sandbox, the ER was the only place that made sense. The chaos quieted the noise in her head. Saving lives was her penance. Now it was gone. She reached the locker room in the basement. It was empty. She opened a locker revealing a small, neat space. A spare set of scrubs, a stethoscope, a fram. Ed photo of her old unit faces of men and women who were mostly gone now, and tucked in the back a small silver coin with a trident insignia. She ran her thumb over the coin. The only easy day was yesterday. Guess today is the hard day, she whispered to herself. She packed her bag efficiently. She took off her scrubs and changed into the jeans and a simple gray t-shirt. She felt exposed without the uniform. Just another civilian. Just another unemployed woman in Seattle. As she zipped up her bag, her phone buzzed. It was a text from Rickman. Rickman, I'm sorry, Abby. He moved the old man, put him in the hallway near the vending machines. I tried to stop him. Abby's grip on her phone tightened until her knuckles turned white. He had done it anyway. Spite. Pure spite. She slung her bag over her shoulder and walked out. She had to pass the ER waiting room to leave. She couldn't leave without checking. She saw the gurney near the vending machine shoved against the wall. The old man was there looking small and gray under the thin hospital blanket. The hustle of the waiting moved around him. Opal coughing, kids crying, phones ringing. He was alone in the noise. Abby walked over, ignoring the security guard who started to step toward her. She knelt beside the gurney. I'm sorry, she whispered. I tried. The old man's eyes fluttered open. They were milky with cataracts, but for a second they focused on her. He reached out a trembling hand and gripped her wrist. His skin was burning up. Echo, he rasped. Echo 1. Abby froze. Echo 1, she repeated. Els is hot. The old man wheezed, his grip surprisingly strong. Get the bird. He wasn't just a homeless man. He was Halushi. Nading. Stuck in a memory. But the terminology, Echo and LZ. Before she could ask more, the security guard grabbed her shoulder. Ma'am, you need to leave. Dr. Sterling's orders. Abby stood up, brushing the guard's hand off. I'm leaving. She walked out the automatic doors into the cool Seattle rain. The gray sky mirrored her mood. She walked to the bus stop at the edge of the hospital campus, sitting on the wet bench. She put her head in her hands. 5 years of service, gone. She sat there for 10 minutes, watching the rain create rivulets on the pavement. She was wondering how she would pay rent, wondering if she should just pack up and move to a cabin in Montana like she always dreamed. Then she heard it. At first it was a low throwing like a heartbeat in the sky. Then it grew into a rhythmic warm that vibrated in her chest. Abby looked up. Coming in low over the city skyline, cutting through the rain and the fog, were 2 helicopters. Not the red and white medical transport choppers that usually landed at St. Jude's. These were dark gray, sleek, menacing MH-60 Blackhawks. They were flying G-fast, banking harder on the skyscrapers. They weren't heading for the naval base. They were banking directly toward the hospital. People on the street stopped to look up. Cars slowed down. The roar became deafening. Abby stood up slowly. She knew that sound. She knew that profile. The lead helicopter didn't circle for a standard approach. It came in aggressively, hovering right over the hospital roof. The second one peeled off, circling the building like a predator, protecting its kill. Her phone buzzed again. Rickman, Brickman, Abby, you need to come back now. Abby, I can't. I'm fired. Rickma? And no, you don't understand. Military police just kicked in the ER doors. They have rifles and a chopper just landed on the roof without clearance. The pilot is screaming for the charge nurse. Abby stared at the phone. She looked up at the circling Black Hawk. Then the second text came through. Rickman, they aren't asking for the charge nurse anymore. They are asking for Lieutenant Commander Foster. Abby, who are you? Is you? Abby dropped her bag on the bench. The rain soaked her t-shirt, sticking it to her skin. On her right bicep, usually covered by scrubs, a tattoo was now visible through the wet fabric. A simplistic design of a caduceus entwined not with snakes, but with a trident. She turned around and started running back toward the hospital. The scene inside the main lobby of St. Jude's Medical Center was total controlled chaos. Dr. Preston Sterling stood in the center of the polished atrium, his face a mask of purple rage. He was used to being the most powerful man in any room, but now he was being ignored by 20 men in full tactical gear. I demand to speak to your commandant. G. Officer Sterling screamed, pointing a finger at a stone-faced Marine guarding the elevators. This is private property. You cannot just land a military aircraft on my roof and storm my hospital with assault rifles. I will have your badges. I will sue the Department of Defense. The Marine didn't even blink. He stared through Sterling as if the hospital director were made of glass. Clear the civilian sector. A voice crackled over the radio. Team Bravo, secure the 4th floor. Team Alpha, locate the HVI high V-value individual. Condition is critical. Who's in charge here? Sterling yelled again, grabbing the arm of a passing soldier. The soldier spun around, not with violence, but with a speed and precision that made Sterling recoil. The soldier was a captain, his uniform crisp despite the tactical vest. Step back, sir, the captain ordered. His name tag read, Briggs, we are conducting a recovery operation for a missing high-ranking officer. Interference will be considered a federal offense. Missing Officer Sterling sputtered, we have no officers here. We have a billionaire son with a broken leg and a waiting room full of flu cases. We tracked his transponder to this location, Captain Briggs said, checking a wrist-mounted GPS unit. Signal is stationary. Emergency room Bay 4. Sterling froze. The blood drained from his face, leaving him pasty and sweating. Bay 4. The homeless man, the vagrant he had ordered to be thrown into the hallway. That's impossible, Sterling stammered. That man is a bum, a John Doe. He was found under a bridge. That man, a deep voice boomed from the automatic doors, is Admiral Thomas Blackwood, former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. AND if he dies because of your incompetence, I will personally see to it that this hospital is dismantled brick by brick. Sterling turned. Walking through the rain-seeked doors was a man wearing the stars of a general. Behind him, flanked by 2 MPs, was Abigail Foster. She looked different. Her hair was wet, plastered to her skull, and her civilian clothes were soaked. But her posture had changed. The slump of the overworked, underappreciated nurse was gone. She stood with her son still straight. Her chin raised her eyes, scanning the room with a tactical awareness that Sterling had never seen in her. Sterling pointed a shaking finger at her. You're trespassing. I fired her security. Get her out of here. General Holloway ignored Sterling completely. He turned to Abby. Lieutenant Commander, Holloway said, nodding to her. It's been a long time. Abby didn't salute. She was in civilian attire, but she nodded sharply. General, what is the status of the Admiral? Vitals are crashing. Our flight surgeon is 5 minutes out on the second bird. We need you to stabilize him for extraction. He has severe pneumonia and likely sepsis, Abby said, a voice crisp and authoritative. I suspected a cardiac event before I was removed from the floor. He needs a central line and immediate broad-spectrum antibiotics plus presses to keep his pressure up. Do it, Holloway ordered. Wait just a minute. Sterling stepped between them, his ego overriding his survival instinct. She is not a doctor. She is a fired nurse. She has no privileges at this hospital anymore. If she touches a patient, I will sue everyone here for malpractice. Abby stepped forward. She moved into Sterling's personal space, her blue eyes icy cold. Dr. Sterling, she said, her voice low and dangerous. Admiral Blackwood is a Navy SEAL. He survived 3 tours in Vietnam, 2 in the Gulf, and covert ops you don't even know exist. He has a piece of shrapnel in his chest wall that's been there for 20 years. If you moved him, which I know you did, you likely shifted that fragment. It's probably nicking his pericardium right now. Sterling's mouth opened and closed like a fish. How do you know that? Because I was the corpsman who patched him up in Fallujah when it happened the second time, Abby said. Now get out of my way. Abby broke in to a run heading for the ER doors. Captain Briggs and his team fell in behind her, forming a protective wedge. They burst into the emergency room. The scene was confusion. Patients were crying, nurses were huddled behind the station, and Dr. Rickman was standing by the vending machines looking terrified. The gurney was where they had left it. Admiral Blackwood was gray, his lips blue. He was gasping for air, a terrible rattling sound coming from his chest. Rickman, Abby shouted, snapping her fingers. Crash cart now. Dr. Rickman jolted into action. On it, Abby reached the gurney. She didn't wait for instruments. She ripped the thin hospital blanket off. She put her ear to the Admiral's chest. Muffled heart sounds. She announced distended neck veins, hypertension. It's Tampa. The shrapnel moved. He needs surgery, Rickman yelled, sliding the crash cart over. Tram 1 is still occupied by the Harrington kid. Abby looked at the closed curtains of Trauma 1. Not anymore. She marched over to the curtain and ripped it back. The young Mr. Harrington was ying on the bed, scrolling on his phone while two nurses fluffed his pillows. His broken leg was elevated. Get up, Abby ordered. Excuse me, the boy sneered. My dad owns this, Captain Briggs. Abby barked without looking back. Mom, clear this bay. I have a dying man. Two Marines stepped forward, lifting the entire gurney with a screaming Harrington boy on it and carrying it bodily out into the hallway. Move the Admiral in, Abby shouted. They wheeled the old man into the trauma bay. The monitors were hooked up instantly. The alarms began to blare. Beep, beep, beep. A flatline warning. He's arresting, Rickman yelled. Pa, no pulse. Saint. Art compressions, Abby ordered. Epinephrine 1 millig. She looked at the general who was standing at the foot of the bed. I need to open his chest, Abby said. Clamshell thoracotomy. We have to relieve the pressure and clamp the bleeder before the flight surgeon gets here or he's dead. Sterling had run into the room panting. You can't do a thoracectomy. You're a nurse that requires a board-certified surgeon. Abby looked at Rickman. Doctor, are you going to do it? Rickman looked at his shaking hands. He was an ER doctor, not a trauma surgeon. He had done maybe 2 in his life, and both patients had died. He looked at the dying Admiral. He looked at Abby's steady hands. I can't, Rickman whispered. I'll kill him. Abby grabbed the scalpel from the tray. She looked at Sterling. Then record this for the lawsuit, she said. She lowered the blade to the Admiral's chest. The silence in Trauma 1 was absolute, broken only by the rhythmic whoosh of the ventilator and the chaotic beeping of the cardiac monitor. Abby didn't hesitate. The scalpel moved with a fluidity that betrayed years of muscle memory. This wasn't the hesitation of a civilian nurse. This was the brutal efficiency of battlefield medicine. She made the incision across the chest, ignoring the spray of blood that hit a gray t-shirt. Retractors, she commanded. Dr. Rickman, snapping out of his shock, grabbed the instruments. He inserted the spreaders and cranked the chest open. Jesus, Rickman breathed. It's a mess in there. The pericardial sac, the membrane around the heart, was bulging and purple, filled with blood. The heart couldn't beat because it was being strangled by the fluid. Pericardium is tense, Abby narrated for the room, her voice devoid of emotion. Snipping the sac, she made a small cut. Dark blood gushed out, relieving the pressure instantly. Beneath it, the heart gave a sluggish, weak thump, then another. We have a rhythm, Rickman said, watching the monitor. BP is rising, 60/40, 70/50. Find the bleeder, Abby muttered, her hands deep inside the chest cavity. Suction, a nurse, one who had previously been too scared to look at Sterling, jumped forward with the suction hose. She cleared the field. There, Abby said. Right ventricle, small laceration. The old shrapnel fragment is wedged right against the coronary artery. You can't stitch that, Rickman said, sweating. If you nick the artery, he strokes out on the table. We need a cardiothoracic specialist. No time, Abby said. General Holloway, how far is the flight surgeon? 3 minutes out, the general replied from the doorway. He was watching Abby with a look of intense pride mixed with anxiety. He won't last 3 minutes, Abby said. I'm going in. 40 pro-lane suture Castro driver. She held D out her hand. The nurse slapped the needle driver into her palm. Sterling was watching from the corner, his face pale. He was witnessing something impossible. The quiet nurse, who he had bullied for 5 years, was performing open heart surgery with the skill of a department chief. You're going to kill him, Sterling whispered. Though his voice lacked its usual venom, it sounded more like prayer. You're going to kill him and destroy this hospital. Abby ignored him. Her world had narrowed down to a single millimeter of tissue. She could feel the ghost of the sandstorm in Iraq, the heat of the tent, where she had done this before, under fire with a flashlight held between her teeth. Steady, she looped a suture. 1 stitch, the heartbeat against her fingers, a slippery moving target, steady. 2 stitches. She tied the knot. The bleeding slowed. 1 more. She whispered. She threw the final stitch. The bleeding stopped. The heart, no longer compressed and no longer leaking, began to be stronger. BP 10/70. Rickman announced, his voice cracking with relief. Sinus rhythm. He's stable. Abby exhaled a long, shuddering breath. She stepped back, holding her bloody hands up. Pack it. Don't close the chest yet. The flight surgeon will want to inspect the repair. The room erupted into movement. Nurses began cleaning the patient, hanging fresh blood bags. Abby walked to the sink in the corner. She turned on the water and watched the blood. The Admiral's blood swirled down the drain. Her hands started to shake now, the adrenaline dump. Lieutenant Commander, a voice said behind her. She turned. It was General Holloway. Good work, Abby, he said softly. I'm not a commander anymore. General, she said, grabbing a paper towel. I'm a civilian. I just performed surgery without a license. I'm pretty sure I'm going to jail. You were operating under the Good Samaritan laws in a catastrophic emergency, Holloway said. And furthermore, you are reactivated. Abby frowned. Reactivated? Holloway pulled a folded paper from his pocket. I signed this in the chopper on the way over. As of 800 hours this morning, you are retroactively returned to active duty status for the duration of this operation. You were following orders. He smiled grimly. Let Dr. Sterling tried to sue the United States Navy. Speaking of Sterling, the hospital director was currently trying to sneak out the back door of the trauma bay. Secure him, Holloway barked. 2 MPs blocked the door. Sterling bumped into their chests and stumbled back. This is kidnapping, Sterling shrieked. I am a civilian. I have rights. We're not arresting you, Doctor, Holloway said, stepping closer. We're just detaining you until the local police arrive. You see, when we ran the Admiral's background to confirm his identity, we found something interesting. His pension checks, they've been deposited, but his bank account hasn't been touched in 6 months. Abby stepped forward. He was homeless, living under a bridge. Exactly, Holloway said, his eyes drilling into Sterling. Which means someone else has been accessing his accounts. And then we looked at the hospital records. St. Jude's has been billing the VA for treatments for Admiral Blackwood for 3 weeks, but he only just arrived today. The room went silent. Fraud. Massive federal insurance fraud. Sterling's face turned the color of ash. Clerical error. It must be a recall error. We checked your other indigent patients, Holloway continued. It seems St. Jude has a habit of admitting homeless veterans on paper, billing the government millions and never actually treating them. Ghost patients. That is a federal crime, Doctor, and since it involves military funds, it's treason adjacent. Sterling slumped against the wall, his legs giving out. Just then, the door swung open. A team of men in flight suits rushed in, the military medical team. The lead doctor, a colonel, looked at the open chest of the patient. He inspected the sutures on the heart. He looked up at Rickman. Nice work, Doctor. Clean ties. Rickman shook his head and pointed at Abby. Not me, her. The colonel looked at Abby. He saw the wet t-shirt, the messy bun, the blood on her arms. Then he saw the tattoo on her bicep. He stood up straighter. Commander Foster, the Angel of Ramarty. Abby winced at the nickname. Just Abby, Colonel. Is he good to move? Thanks to you, yes, we're taking him to Walter Reed. The birdies spooled up. They began to transfer the Admiral to the portable transport unit. As they lifted him, the Admiral's eyes fluttered open. The anesthesia was light. He looked around wildly, the panic of the dementia setting in. Easy, Admiral, the colonel said. The old man thrashed. Echo, where is Echo? Abby stepped into his line of sight. She took his hand. I'm here, Admiral, she said softly. Echo 1 is on station. Eliz is cold. You're going home. The old man focused on her face. A tear leaked out of his cloudy eye. Abby, you came back. I never left, sir, she whispered. He squeezed her hand and relaxed the sedative. Finally taking hold, they wheeled him out. The noise of the helicopter on the roof spun up to a roar. Abby stood in the empty trauma bay. The floor was covered in bloody wrappers. Her career at St. Jude's was over. Her quiet life was over. So, General Holloway said, standing beside her, you've been hiding out in Seattle for 5 years, scrubbing floors and taking orders from a man like Sterling. I needed the quiet, General, Abby said. It's too quiet for you, Abby, Holloway said. We need you back. The Naval Medical Center needs a new director of trauma training. I can't think of anyone better qualified. Abby looked at her hands. They were steady. I'll think about it, she said. Don't think too long. The opera leaves in 10 minutes. We have a seat for you. I'll wait to leave, then stopped. Oh, and Abby, there's someone in the lobby who wants to see you. Says he's Mr. Harrington. Abby frowned. The boy's father? Yes. He saw what you did to his son, throwing him out of the room. Abby sighed. Great. Another lawsuit. I wouldn't be so sure. Holloway smiled. Abby walked out to the waiting room. It was strange. 20 minutes ago she had walked through here as a fired, disgraced employee. Now she walked through as the woman who had just commanded a room full of officers and surgeons. The staff watched her. The nurses whispered. The security guard who had tried to kick her out was nowhere to be seen. In the center of the waiting room stood a man who radiated power. He was older than his son, with silver hair and a tailored suit that cost more than Abby made in a year. This was Charles Harrington, the billionaire tech mogul. Beside him, his son was sitting in a wheelchair, looking sullen and embarrassed. Abby took a deep breath. She wasn't going to apologize. She had saved her life. If that cost her a lawsuit, so be it. She walked up to Harrington. Mr. Harrington, I'm Abigail Foster. I understand you wanted to see me. Charles Harrington looked her up and down. He saw the blood-stained jeans, the intense eyes, the exhaustion. You're the one who threw my son out of the trauma room? Harrington asked. His voice was deep neutral. I am, Abby said firmly. Your son had a stable fracture. My patient was dying. I made a triage decision. I would do it again. The son Junior piped up. Dad, she literally had soldiers carry me out. It was humiliating. You need to ruin her. Charles Harrington turned slow. Lee to look at his son. Silence. The boy shut his mouth instantly. Harrington turned back to Abby. A slow smile spread across his face. He extended his hand. Thank you, he said. Abby blinked, confused. She shook his hand cautiously. Excuse me, my son, Harrington said, gesturing to the boy. Has been spoiled his entire life? He thinks the world revolves around him because of my checkbook. Dr. Sterling has been feeding that delusion, treating us like royalty when we're just people. Harrington glared at the closed door of the director's office where MPs were currently seizing computers. I watched the security footage from the hallway, Harrington continued. I saw you stand up to Sterling. I saw you prioritize a homeless man over my donation. In my world, a foster integrity is the most expensive commodity there is, and you have it in spades. I was just doing my job, Abby said. A job you were fired for, Harrington noted. I heard Sterling shouting it. Yes, Abby admitted. Well, Harrington pulled a business card from his pocket. I own a private medical research facility about 20 miles north of here. We work on advanced prosthetics for veterans. We need a chief medical officer who understands trauma veterans and who isn't afraid to tell rich board members to shut up and sit down. He handed her the card. Double your salary, full benefits, and you answer only to me. Abby looked at the card. It was a golden ticket. A way out. A way to help vets without the bureaucracy of the hospital or the intensity of the military. Abby started. You don't have to answer now, Harrington said. Take care of your admiral, but the offer stands. He turned to his son. Come on, we're going to a county house. Pedal to get your legs set. You need a dose of reality. Harrington wheeled his shocked son away. Abby stood alone in the lobby. The adrenaline was finally leaving her system, leaving her knees weak. She sat down on one of the plastic chairs. Excuse me, Miss Foster. A young nurse, one of the new hires, was standing there holding a coffee cup. I brought you this. I saw you were shivering. Abby took the coffee. It was warm in her hands, and the nurse hesitated, then lowered her voice. Is it true about the tattoo about Ramarty? Abby pulled her sleeve down, covering the trident. She looked at the young nurse. She saw the same fear and exhaustion she had felt 10 years ago. It's just a story, Abby said gently. Go back to work. Don't let Rickman kill anyone. The nurse smiled and ran off. Abby drank the coffee. She felt a shadow fall over her. She looked up. General Holloway was back. Time to go, Abby. Admiral Blackwood is asking for you again. He won't let the flight nurses touch him. He says they look too soft. Abby chuckled. It was a dry, rusty sound. He always was a stubborn old mule. He's family, Holloway said. We don't leave family behind. Are you coming? Abby looked around the hospital, the place where she had hidden for 5 years, the place where she had tried to be invisible. She looked at the director's office where Sterling was being led out in handcuffs by the police, flashing cameras capturing his ruin. Karma. It had arrived on rollerblades. She stood up. She tossed the empty coffee cup in the trash. "Yeah," Abby said. "I'm coming." She followed the general out the automatic doors into the rain toward the waiting black oak. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like a ghost. She felt like she was waking up. As she climbed into the helicopter, she looked down at the city one last time. The rotors spun up, lifting them into the gray sky. But the story wasn't over. Not yet. Because as the helicopter banged toward the ocean, Ab's phone buzzed in her pocket. It was an unknown number. She ignored it. It buzzed again and again. She pulled it out and looked at the screen. A text message. Unknown. "You made a scene today, Commander. You drew a lot of attention. We've been looking for you." AB's blood ran cold. The helicopter noise faded into the background. "Not known. The incident in Syria. We know what really happened. And now that you're back in the light, we're coming to finish it." She stared at the phone. The Admiral wasn't the only one with ghosts. Abby had them too, and hers were armed. She looked at General Holloway, who was shouting something into his headset. He didn't know. Nobody knew about Syria. That was the one secret she had kept even from the Navy. The Angel of Ramadi had a demon chasing her, and she had just let it right to her. The Black Hawk cut through the cloud layer, leaving the rain-soaked city of Seattle far behind. Inside the cabin, the vibration was a constant teeth-rattling hum. Admiral Blackwood was stable, the flight surgeon monitoring the new cardiac rhythm with obsessive care. Abby sat strapped into the jump seat opposite General Holloway. Her phone felt heavy in her pocket, like a stone dragging her down. The text message burned in her mind. The incident in Syria. We know what really happened. For 5 years, Abby had told herself that Syria was buried. It was the reason she had refused promotions. It was the reason she had let a petty tyrant like Sterling push her around. She wanted to be small. She wanted to be insignificant, because in her world, being noticed meant being targeted. General Holloway tapped his headset and looked at Abby. He saw the color drain from her face. Not from the surgery she had just performed, but from something else. He motioned for her to switch her comms to a private channel. "You look like you've seen a ghost, Abby." Holloway's voice crackled in her ear defenders. "And I don't mean the Admiral." Abby looked at the sleeping old man. "General, why was the Admiral homeless? He has a pension. He has family. He has a security detail." Holloway's face darkened. "He went dark 6 months ago. He started investigating a discrepancy in the defense budget. Black Ops funding being siphoned off into private accounts. He told me he was close to finding the head of the snake. Then he vanished. We thought he had a stroke and wandered off, or that he had been taken. He wasn't taken. Ibiza ID. Realizing the horror of the situation, he was hiding." She pulled the dirty faded army jacket that had been covering the Admiral earlier. It was bundled at her feet. She began to pat down the pockets. "Abby, what are you doing?" "He wouldn't let go of this jacket," Abby said, her fingers frantically searching the lining. In the ER, even when he was crashing, he was clutching it. "He wasn't checking for dog tags, General. He was checking for this." Her fingers brushed against the lump in the bottom hem of the jacket. It wasn't a factory seam. It was hand-stitched, crude, and hasty. Abby grabbed a pair of trauma shears from the medical kit and ripped the seam open. A small black micro SDC. Ard fell into her palm. Aloe's eyes widened. "The evidence was playing the part," Abby whispered. "He knew they were watching his bank accounts. He knew they were watching his house. So he became invisible. He became a homeless vet, the one thing society ignores completely. He hid in plain sight, but he got sick. Holloway realized pneumonia, and he ended up at St. Jude, where Dr. Sterling was running a fraud scheme." Abby finished. "Sterling wasn't part of the conspiracy, but his greed exposed the Admiral. When Sterling registered him to build the VA, he pinged the system. The people hunting the Admiral found him." She held up her phone, showing the text message. "They know I have him, General, and they know who I am." Econ wasn't the Admiral's call sign. It was the mission in Damascus, the one where my entire unit was wiped out. Holloway went rigid. The official report stated that Abby's unit had been hit by an IED. Only Abby had survived. "It wasn't an IED, was it?" Holloway asked, his voice low. "No." Abby said, tears pricking her eyes. "It was a cleanup crew. We found a warehouse full of American weapons being sold to insurgents. We radioed it in. 10 minutes later, a drone strike hit us, not the warehouse. Us." She looked at the SD card. "I bet the proof of who ordered that strike is on this card. That's what the Admiral found. That's why they want him dead." Alloway looked out the window. The skyline of Washington, D.C. was approaching in the distance, but they were diverting to a military airfield in Maryland. "Who is meeting us at the landing zone?" Abby asked. "Medical transport," said. "And a team from Defense Intelligence. They insisted on taking custody of the Admiral for debriefing." Ab's blood ran cold. "General, you have to abort the landing." "What? Defense Intelligence?" Abby said. "Who signed the transfer order?" Holloway checked his tablet. Director Kruger. Abby closed her eyes. Kruger was the CIA liaison in Damascus. He was the one who gave us the coordinates for the warehouse. "If we land there," Abby said, opening her eyes, "the Admiral never makes it to the hospital, and neither do we." Holloway stared at her. He looked at the fragile old man on the stretcher. He looked at the SD card in Ab's hand. He didn't hesitate. "Pilot," Holloway barked on the command channel. "Abort approach. Change of heading. General." The pilot's confused voice came back. "We have a priority clearance for Andrews. The reception team is already on the tarmac." "I said abort," Holloway shouted. "New destination, Quantico Marine Base. Get me the Provost Marshal on the secure line. Tell him we are coming in, hot, and we require a full perimeter lockdown. No one gets near this bird without my direct authorization." The helicopter banked hard to the left, the sudden G-force pressing them into their seats. Below them on the tarmac at Andrews Air Force Base, a convoy of black SUVs was waiting. Standing by the lead car, a man in a trench coat watched the helicopter veer away. He pressed a radio to his ear. "They realize," the man said. "They're running. Shoot it down, sir." The voice on the radio hesitated. "That's a friendly bird." "We can't," I said. "Shoot it down. Blame it on a mechanical failure." In the helicopter, the radar warning receiver began to scream. Lock on, missile lock," the pilot yelled. "Ground-based system hanging on." Abby grabbed the Admiral's stretcher rails. The helicopter dove, dropping like a stone to break the radar lock. Flares popped from the sides. Bright magnesium burst distracting the targeting systems. "They're firing on us inside U.S. airspace." The CO pilots screamed. "This is insanity. This is a coup," Alloway growled, unholstering his sidearm. "Abby, keep the Admiral alive. We're going to have a rough landing." The pilot flew aggressively, hugging the train, using the terrain to hide from the radar. They were miles from Quantico. They wouldn't make it. "Put it down," Holloway ordered. "There, that clearing." The Blackhawk flared hard, the rotors chopping the air as they slammed onto a muddy field near a highway. The landing gear collapsed with a sickening crunch. The bird tilted the rotors, striking the mud and shattering, sending shrapnel flying. Silence followed. "Everyone out!" Holloway shouted, kicking the jam door open. "Defensive perimeter, move!" Abby unbuckled the Admiral. "Help me!" she yelled to a flightly surgeon. Together they dragged the unconscious Admiral out of the wreckage and into the tall grass. The two door gunners and Captain Briggs took our positions around the crash site, weapons raised, far off down the highway. The sound of slamins approached, but mixed with the sirens was the roar of engines. Black SUVs staring across the field, bouncing over the rough terrain. Kruger was coming to finish the job. The muddy field in Maryland transformed into a kill zone. Abby crouched behind the twisted fuselage of the crashed Blackhawk, shielding Admiral Blackwood's body with her own. The rain mixed with the smell of leaking jet fuel. Bullets pinged off the helicopter's armor as the convoy of black SUVs stopped 200 yards away. A DAS, and men in tactical gear advanced, moving with the precision of a cleanup crew. "They don't want witnesses," General Holloway shouted, wiping blood from a cut on his forehead. He fired his sidearm blindly over the wreckage. "Abby, how is he?" "Heart rate is spiking," Abby yelled back, checking the portable monitor. "We need a hospital, not a firefight. Give me the card." Abby handed the micro SD card found in the Admiral's jacket, the evidence of the treason bricks. Holloway roared at the Marine captain. "Take this card, run for the highway, flag down the state police, get this to the Pentagon." "Sir, I'm not leaving you. That is a direct order. Go." Briggs grabbed the card, hesitated for a split second, and then sprinted toward the train. Concentrated fire tore up the mud around his feet, but he dove into the mist and disappeared. Realizing the evidence was gone, the attackers grew desperate. The gunfire intensified. The SEO pilot lay dead near the company. "Kip it." Abby looked at his rifle. She hadn't fired a weapon since Syria, but the quiet nurse was gone. The lieutenant commander picked up the rifle and racked the charging handle. "Watch the flank," Alloway ordered. Abby saw a figure crawling through the tall grass. She didn't hesitate. She exhaled and squeezed the trigger. The figure dropped. "One down," she called out, her voice steady. Suddenly, the firing stopped. Director Kruger stepped out from behind an SUV with a megaphone. "General Holloway, surrender the fugitive Blackwood, and we will de-escalate." "He's a hero, and you're a traitor," Holloway shouted back. "You have 30 seconds before we mortar your position," Kruger threatened. They were outgunned and low on ammo. Abzeisel landed on a large medical oxygen cylinder from the crash wreckage. It was leaking, hissing softly. "General," she whispered, "the oxygen tank. It's an IED waiting to happen." Holloway looked at the tank, then at the advancing enemy line. "Roll it out." They shoved a heavy silver cylinder. It rolled down the muddy incline, bouncing toward Kruger's men. "Now," I yelled. She raised a rifle, aiming not at the men but at the brass valve of the tank. She fired. The bullet sheared the valve. The pressurized oxygen ignited instantly. A massive fireball engulfed the front line of the attackers, sending mud and debris flying into the air. The concussion knocked the remaining mercenaries off their feet. In the ringing silence that followed, a heavy mechanical roar tore through the air from the highway. 3 armored personnel carriers smashed through the perimeter fence, painted a Marine Corps woodland camel. Captain Briggs had made it. Friendly Fork S. Briggs's voice boomed over the radio. "Cease fire." Marines poured out of the APCs, swarming the stunned mercenaries. Director Kruger, covered in mud, dropped his weapon as a dozen rifles were trained on his chest. Abby slumped against the helicopter wreckage. Her rifle slipped from her hands and fell into the mud. Abby turned toward the Admiral, her chest rising and falling with exhaustion. "It's over, sir," she whispered. "We made it." Admiral Blackwood slowly opened his eyes, pain etched across his face, but he smiled. "Echo 1, he murmured. "Home." Surrounded by the fading smell of cordite and wet earth, Abby Foster finally allowed herself to breathe. The war she had been fighting for 5 long years was finally behind her. 6 months later, the sun shone brightly over the White House lawn. Abby stood tall in her dress whites, the gold commander stripes gleaming on her sleeves. Beside her sat Admiral Blackwood, still recovering but sharp as ever, and General Holloway, proud and silent. The president stepped to the podium for courage above and beyond the call of duty. "Commander Abigail Foster." Abby stepped forward. The Navy Cross was placed around her neck. The applause was respectful until Admiral Blackwood struggled to his feet. Despite the cane at his side, he stood at full attention and raised a salute to her. The crowd rose with him. The standing ovation thundered across the lawn. Later, during the reception, Charles Harrington approached Abby with 2 glasses of champagne. "Congratulations, Commander," he said with a grin. "Or should I say doctor now?" Abby chuckled softly. "Just Abby, and I'm keeping my nursing license." He raised an eyebrow. "Good, because I still owe you a job offer." "I have a counteroffer," she replied. "I'll run your veteran center, but I want to build a program for the ones falling through the cracks, the forgotten ones, the ghosts." Harrington didn't hesitate. "You're hired. When do you start?" "Monday." She glanced across the lawn, spotting Dr. Rickman waving proudly from a distance. As she touched the metal at her throat, her fingers brushed the scar on her arm, the one that marked where her trident tattoo rested beneath the fabric. She wasn't hiding anymore. Abby Foster was finally home. This story reminds us that true heroism isn't about titles, money, or power. Dr. Sterling had the suit, the office, and the authority, but he was empty where it mattered. Abby had nothing but crubs, scars, and a sense of duty. Yet she earned the respect of admirals and saved lives when it counted most. The quietest person in the room might be carrying the greatest strength. Never judge a patient by their clothes, never underestimate a nurse, and never mistake humility for weakness. If this story of justice, redemption, and military honor moved you, make sure to like the video and subscribe to Hero Revealed.